A very warm welcome to EPG Pathshala, and I'm Swati Banerjee, Associate Professor at the School of Social Work at Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai. And today we'll be discussing the module on gender and social entrepreneurship within the paper on gender and social work. Social entrepreneurship, that's new terminology, evolving terminology, and a big catchword, a big jargon at present. So how do we understand social entrepreneurship as a new development pathway and try to understand the gender constructs within that will be an initial attempt in this discussion. Simultaneously, we'll also try to look at the various literature that exists within social entrepreneurship and draw out the key debates, the key concepts, and some key reflections. We'll also try and look the characteristics and challenges that social entrepreneurs face within the context of building social entrepreneurship. And then we'll look at a little bit into the trajectory of social entrepreneurship in India as an emerging field, the kind of innovations, the kind of organizations that is there in this field, and also the structural inequities and the factors which determine women's entrepreneurial initiatives. Is there a difference? Does women's disadvantage also weave into this field and disadvantages them? Social entrepreneurship will also try to understand social entrepreneurship at the intersection of several disciplines and within mainstream developmental processes and a capitalist market. Therefore, what are the dilemmas and the challenges in it, and what could be possible ways forward? Having said that, we'll start with the key concept and try to understand what is this idea, what is this thought about social entrepreneurship. Now, the underlying drive for social entrepreneurship, as described by Austin and Jen, is to create social value, is to create social good, is to address certain problems, create a positive impact, rather than personal and shareholder wealth. So it's much more than your profit, but it's trying to look at how do we add value in addressing societal problems. Social entrepreneurship, the theorists talk about, is also not about starting a business or becoming more commercial. It's about finding new and better ways to create social value. However, we often see that a lot of us would identify the gaps that exist and create poor and rural people as our consumers, and in the process we become great entrepreneurs. But what happens to people? What happens to their problems? Social entrepreneurship is also defined as something which seeks sustainable large-scale change through pattern-breaking ideas. Essentially, it's talking about the concept of innovation, newer findings, newer ways to address societal problems again. Now, is there a relevance of social entrepreneurship within social work? Or it's largely, as located within innovation and management studies, it stays there? Let's try to figure this out. Very recent social entrepreneurship has been a very recent entrant, and it is a recent terminology in the field of social work. And it's continuously evolving as an area of development work in many countries, and especially in Europe today, there's a lot of emphasis on that. And of course, in India as well, today we are talking about entrepreneurship a lot, but the social entrepreneurship and the debates around that is still very evolving. The meaning changes as one moves from the field of, let's say management, innovation studies to social work. Because social entrepreneurship largely, as I said, has been located at the crossroads of various disciplines, which is social theory at one end, innovation studies at the other, and let's say management studies on the other. So how do we look at this interesting concept which is at the crossroads of these different disciplines, and how do we look at its relevance within social work? With the rise of neoliberalism, markets have taken over, as we all know, and this role of the state in terms of welfare is getting diminished. So this shift in the welfare context towards a more market-oriented approach also calls for some amount of intervention here, and perhaps social entrepreneurship could be a way out. So that it doesn't get subsumed under the larger umbrella of a neoliberal approach, or just within certain confines of certain academic disciplines. Understanding social entrepreneurship will also complement our in-depth understanding of the socio-economic and grassroots realities to address critical development problems. So it could be therefore seen as a pathway or as an approach or as a strategy in social work, which will help us to look for solutions for some of the larger social problems. Now, how do we reclaim the social and gender social entrepreneurship? Because often we realize that though we are calling it social entrepreneurship, but it largely goes within the ambit of entrepreneurship, and the social is neglected. The business ideas takes precedence over, let's say, addressing the structural inequities. Can social entrepreneurship alone solve all the problems? Perhaps no. And there are many disparities in our society which calls for multiple approaches, and gender disparity is one of it. Social entrepreneurship can't and must not be looked in isolation to gender, especially while working with women and communities in general. And very important to build, enhance and alter the mainstream understanding of social entrepreneurship is to redefine this social within a gendered context. There are various literature in social entrepreneurship, again coming from different disciplines. Scanning through this literature, some of the key reflections that emerge include it talks about the origin of social entrepreneurship, the word, how has it evolved. So entrepreneur in French word means someone who undertakes a project or an activity. The Irish economist Richard was the first person to coin the term, and he describes entrepreneurs as undertakers engaged in market exchange at their own risk. So risk becomes a very underlying concept in social entrepreneurship and in entrepreneurship. Commercial enterprise is for making profit, whereas social enterprise is conceptualized as something which will add social value. So that's the basic difference. The motivations, therefore, are also very different. The Ashoka movement, for example, gave a new meaning to the field of social entrepreneurship. This was founded as a non-profit organization which identifies and invests in social entrepreneurs to achieve maximum social impact. It must be noted here that Ashoka as a platform recognizes entrepreneurs as change makers, irrespective of the market demands, and I think that's a very important landmark. Some of the definitions which emerges from the literature here, includes one, social enterprise is often described as two little words, but having a very large societal, or having the potential of very large societal impact. Robert and Woods defines it as construction, evaluation and pursuit of opportunities for transformative change, which essentially is carried out by a visionary who is passionately dedicated to the understanding and change of individuals and communities. Harding defines social entrepreneurship as any attempt at new social enterprise activity or new social enterprise creation, such as, for example, employment, self-employment, expansion of an existing social enterprise, a team of individuals or established social enterprise, working with marginalized communities with social goals, improving their life, etc. Gardner defines social entrepreneurs as individuals who approach social problems with entrepreneurial spirit and business acumen. So what largely emerges from the literature is that the social entrepreneur or the individual social entrepreneur is quite privileged amongst all of these different definitions. But when we look at the context and the realities of developing countries like India and the kind of inequities that exist, it's often important to understand how do we build collective social entrepreneurship at the grassroots level, and that forms an important understanding when we look at social entrepreneurship within the literature or within the discourse of social work. So some of the key perspectives that emerges from here is that a key understanding is the creation of social value, which is present in all the definitions in terms of access to resources, livelihood promotion, improvement of institutional capacity, emancipation, social justice, etc. Innovations form another important component, social innovation in particular, which talks about, again, a new development approach and pathway to solve some of the existing and the more complex problems. And it talks about addressing immediate social problems, like, for example, water shortage. It talks about addressing larger societal problems like illiteracy, poverty. It also talks about changing the innovation context, which is about changing, for example, the patriarchal context and many such inequities. Another important dimension would be working in collaboration and co-production, creating co-participatory arenas with people. So here it's the change is brought about along with people, and the process is considered to be equally important as the outcome. That often implies also, social entrepreneurship also often implies an economic component vis-a-vis entrepreneurs, stakeholders, community, or livelihoods. Characteristics of social entrepreneurs. Like I've said, that most of the social entrepreneurship definitions and ideas often privilege the social entrepreneurs. That at one end creates them as demigods and puts them in pedestals as somebody doing great work for the upliftment of many people. But simultaneously, it also creates some challenges. And also, there are various characteristics and opportunities that comes their way. So, what is problem for commercial is considered to be an opportunity for social entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs see how they can provide a service or fulfill a need in collaborative and innovative ways. Social entrepreneurs are also supposed to have a balanced combination of business management skills and personality traits. I think we need to add social work skills here as well, which is not there in most of the mainstream literature. It is there also sensitivity, openness, agreeability to various issues, which are considered as important, innovating and motivating factors for the social entrepreneurs. And therefore, there are a lot of challenges. Some of the challenges within the Indian context would include funding, getting investors. Challenges for social entrepreneurs is that social impact is a very slow process, and thus getting investors becomes difficult. Even the deals and negotiations which they make in the market are challenging because it's very tough to get seed investors for the projects. Also, often we see that investment is difficult if there is a real change happening at the grassroots, because let's say we look at women working on garments. So, maybe there is a lot of demand at the market and the demand is generated, but would women be able to cater to that kind of demand and would be able to supply the products? How do we look at, for example, some of the problems that women be facing on a day-to-day basis, because of which they are not able to produce? And all this finally links to the market, links to finance, etc. Acquiring and retaining human resources, that's a major concern at the moment. Scaling is another big dilemma which social entrepreneurs face, both because finances are involved and the ways to scale it. Scaling is not easy because, as we know, the societal context is very different in different places, and often just scaling up doesn't work. Both in terms of horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. Social entrepreneurship in India, how do we understand this as an emerging field? In India, we see that though social innovation has been happening from a long time, but terms like social innovation, terms like social entrepreneurship are comparatively newer terms. We also have in India what is called Jugaad innovation. Essentially, it's about survival mechanisms that people develop for their immediate survival needs. So that's considered to be a historical root in terms of social innovation and social enterprise in India. We have a lot of organizations in India. For example, Seva is considered to be a very important example of social enterprise, which was founded in the 1970s, which organized trade unions of the poor self-employed women in order to ensure their rights and to empower them. And then there are organizations like Amul, Lijjat, Barefoot College, and many such organizations trying to look at people's lives, livelihoods, and an improvement in their quality of life. Another example would be a very interesting example. I thought I need to share this with you. It's an organization or a social enterprise called Dignity and Design. It's an enterprise of liberated women manual scavengers, or women manuals, or liberated women manual scavengers who were earlier engaged in this profession of manual scavenging, which is considered to be one of the most inhuman profession. So they have now come together to start this craft-based enterprise where they're preparing different garments. Now let me take you through the trajectory of this enterprise and to help you discover for yourself where does social fits in, where does gender fits in into this understanding. Like I said, if you look at the first picture, that's a picture where women were engaged in manual scavenging, one of the most inhuman profession, but an organization called Jansahas in Madhya Pradesh, they tried to collectivize and try to liberate them. But after liberation, they realized about 4.5 years back that they have been able to liberate for about more than 18,000 women or 18,000 people, and about 90% of them were women. Now they had this other question of what to do with this women who were liberated. And that is when they started this social enterprise, they started to organize women, build their capacity, and started this community-based collective enterprise, which finally led to dignified livelihoods for these women. And there is a slogan which is in Hindi, and I read it out for you, which says, "Mahilaon ne thana hai, maila nahi uthana hai." Essentially, it's about a firm belief shared by women, erstwhile women manual scavengers, that we will not get back into our oppressive livelihoods, but we look at alternate ways which gives us dignity, and dignity and design as a social enterprise help them to do this. Factors determining women's entrepreneurial initiatives in India. Now, both men and women are engaged in enterprises, but what are the differences? What are the inequities which often hinder women's participation? Which could be the socio-cultural gender constructs, the differences that women, the norms and values which creates differences between men and women in terms of their capacities, the norms and values again which leads to a curbing of women's mobility, and trying to understand women primarily as somebody who will reproduce, somebody who should take care of family and is responsible for the institution of marriage. Some of these factors can be clearly understood as a result of structural inequities which men and women face, and particularly women. Socially prescribed gender roles don't give women certain rights, and that is why social enterprise sometimes is not able to change their marginalized status unless they are able to examine the status quo. So how are women entrepreneurs different? Are they different? Because they are being limited by a lot of their patriarchal responsibilities and norms and values. Women's gender roles, often, like we said, curb their access to public sphere. Family demands become important, and again, therefore, their participation gets reduced. And not every social enterprise or development intervention is talking about looking at these inequalities and talking about empowerment. Like we have discussed in this course on gender and social work, women empowerment is a process which enables women to acquire an ability to make strategic choices. It's just not an outcome. And somewhere I feel that for social enterprises to become gendered, for social entrepreneurship to become gendered, it's also important to understand this trajectory of women's disempowerment and empowerment, and to be able to also address some of these issues. Some of the interrelated dimensions of women empowerment, as given by Naila Kabir, includes access to resources, their potential or agency, and the achievement of those resources. For example, when we are talking about resources, these are not just only confined to material resources, but also different social resources. Agency would be whether they are able to decide in terms of are they able to make a choice. And finally, it's not just about having resources, it's not just about using agency, it's also about achievement of that agency that can decide whether women are able to participate in different social entrepreneurship. For example, to take a related but different example, there could be a resource. For example, school would be there. And the woman might use her agency to send her daughter to the school, but she might still drop out and not reach higher education because of a lot of other factors. So achievement of agency, achievement of choice is another important factor that determines participation in entrepreneurship development. Social entrepreneurship at the intersection of mainstream development processes and a capitalist market, dilemmas and challenges. As the world goes the capitalist way, markets have taken over the role of the state and have influenced the state policies in a big way throughout the world. This is particularly true for the so-called developing countries, where the whole idea of development is distorted in favor of the market. Deconstructing development in such a case becomes very important, and it's important to question if it's development or neoliberalism in disguise. And social enterprise, is it following the neoliberalist pathway? Increase in economic growth has led to evident increase in inequity or inequality as well. Global poverty is a reality today. Almost 50% of the world population lives for less than $2.50 per day. 1/3 of the global poor live in India. So many development theories have come and gone to address just one issue of poverty reduction. More than a goal, it has now become a new election mantra in a lot of places. People relate to it more than any other identity because they are the victims of globalization, and they are also often the guinea pigs for the new schemes, policies, and poverty reduction programs. People at the bottom of the pyramid, again a jargon, are they producers or are they consumers? They are rather looked at as beneficiaries, and often social entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurs continue to look at people, marginalized people, as beneficiaries or recipients of something that they are doling out to them. So how do we conclude it? Difficult, complex, and how do we look at a way forward from here? Social entrepreneurship today is, like we have discussed, is at the crossroads of several disciplines and perspectives, and it often gets co-opted into the designs of mainstream development processes and a capitalist economy. So is there a need to relook and revision the concept of social entrepreneurship and gendered understanding within that? Understanding social entrepreneurship from a people-centered and gender perspectives could provide, has the potential to provide an alternative vision. And some of these characteristics which can provide us that alternate vision could be some of these dilemmas and debates like idea versus people. Most of the time, social entrepreneurship is reduced to idea generation, and many times professionals like you and me gets obsessed with an idea and people are left behind. That is where social workers move one step ahead by decoding the social realities and then conceiving entrepreneurial and development solutions. Human-centric solutions or people-centric solutions are at the heart of social entrepreneurship, and social impact can be assessed by people-centricism. Most importantly, gendering social entrepreneurship is also about recognizing diversity and understanding processes of inclusion. Most social entrepreneurs work with a gender-blind approach, and there is a need to create gender-sensitive organizations for gender transformatory potential of social entrepreneurship. Dignity and design as a social entrepreneurship idea could be an example in this direction. There is a need for gendering the other actors and policymakers as well. Finally, social entrepreneurship is all about considering people as active partners in the process of development. It's not just a tool, it needs to be seen as a pathway, and people-centricism, I'm repeating that again, is the core of it. And social entrepreneurship doesn't always have to relate to an economic activity. It's an approach to solve problems, and that may or may not be market-oriented. Social entrepreneurship must be carefully defined by keeping it people-centric, and I think that's the core of social entrepreneurship in social work and in gendered understanding. And to deepen your understanding, there are many references which you can look at, and some of it would be work by Gardner, work by Gupta, the effect of gender on women-led small enterprises, and then there are some work on social innovation, again, which is very important and connected. Finally, I leave you with this thought that social entrepreneurship has the potential to bridge the gap between the current situation and future aspiration. It's up to us to see how do we do it, how do we create this newer pathway. Thank you so much.